Have you ever started your day with a glass of water, thinking you were doing something good for your health, only to feel off, dizzy, or strangely unsettled? You're not alone. Drinking water first thing in the morning is a golden rule we've all heard. But here's the truth. As we get older, our bodies change, and the way we hydrate has to change with them. Grace, a sharp-minded 76-year-old, used to swear by her ritual of gulping ice-cold water straight from the fridge. It made her feel alert, until her hands began to tremble, her stomach turned, and the chill stayed with her all morning. One small tweak, switching to room temperature water, changed everything. Then there's Frank, a disciplined 72-year-old former coach. He'd chug an entire bottle of water the moment he woke up. But the sudden dizziness and strange flutter in his chest told a different story. Once he slowed down and sipped over 20 minutes instead of seconds, the discomfort disappeared like magic. Harold, 78, thought he was doing everything right, refilling the same plastic bottle every night and keeping it by the bed. What he didn't know was that plastic left overnight, especially in a warm room, can leach harmful chemicals. After switching to a glass bottle with fresh water each morning, his energy returned and the headaches faded. Edith, 80, had faithfully taken her thyroid medication with a full glass of water on an empty stomach for years, until nausea became her new normal. All it took was a shift to just a few sips and a longer wait before breakfast. Her balance returned, and so did her comfort. And Ruth, a fiercely independent 69-year-old, tried skipping breakfast, drinking only water in the morning to follow a trendy fasting routine. What started as a light, proud feeling slowly turned into forgetfulness and fatigue. A single slice of toast and an egg brought her mind and her mornings back to life. It's not just water. It's how, when, and what your body needs now. Number 1, drinking ice-cold water on an empty stomach. Every morning, Grace would shuffle to her kitchen before sunrise, still in her slippers, and pour herself a tall glass of ice-cold water straight from the fridge. She'd been doing it for years. "It wakes me up," she would say, "sharpens the senses." It became her sacred ritual, a way to start each day feeling refreshed and alive. But lately, something had changed. After drinking her usual glass, she began to feel strange. Subtle at first. Her hands would turn clammy, her stomach would twist into tight little knots. She brushed it off at first, blaming it on sleep or age. Then came the faint chills in her chest, lingering long after the glass was empty. Her energy dipped instead of rising. It wasn't the water, was it? During a routine checkup, Grace casually mentioned her symptoms. Her doctor listened, then asked a simple question: "Do you drink cold water first thing in the morning?" When she nodded, he explained what was happening beneath the surface. As we age, our internal systems become more sensitive. During sleep, the body enters a low-energy repair state. Blood vessels constrict, digestion slows, and the heart rate drops. Suddenly, flooding that quiet system with icy water is like throwing snow on a smoldering campfire. The stomach contracts, blood vessels tighten, and the nervous system jumps to high alert. For younger people, it might pass unnoticed, but for someone in their 70s, that shock can linger. Skeptical but curious, Grace made one small change. She began leaving her water out overnight. No ice, no fridge, just room temperature. At first, it felt odd, flat, unexciting, but by the third morning, something shifted. Her stomach stopped rebelling. The clammy hands vanished. That stubborn chill no longer followed her into the day. And most surprising of all, she didn't feel any less awake. In fact, her mornings felt smoother, her mind clearer. What she thought was a harmless habit had been quietly sabotaging her day all along. It wasn't about giving up water. It was about giving her body a gentler way to receive it. Grace didn't need a jolt. She needed a transition. And now, with a simple glass of lukewarm water, she starts each morning not with a shock, but with balance. Number 2, drinking water too fast or in big gulps. Frank had always been a man of structure. A former high school football coach, he lived by routine, early mornings, discipline, and hydration. Every day, without fail, he'd wake up, swing his legs over the side of the bed, and grab a full 16-ounce bottle of water from his nightstand. Before his slippers even touched the floor, the entire bottle was gone in under a minute. It was his badge of health. Hydrate first, then conquer the day. But then came the strange mornings. At first, it was nothing major, Just a brief spell of lightheadedness as he stood up, a little off balance. He chalked it up to age or maybe standing too fast. But it happened again and again. One morning, the room seemed to sway slightly, and he had to grab the dresser for balance. Still, he never suspected the water. After all, drinking water was supposed to be good, especially first thing in the morning. During a checkup, Frank mentioned these dizzy spells. His doctor asked a question that caught him off guard. "How fast are you drinking your water?" Frank chuckled. "Fast, I guess. I just get it over with." That, the doctor explained, was the problem. Overnight, the body enters a calm, resting state. Heart rate slows, blood pressure stabilizes, digestion pauses. Then, just minutes after waking, Frank was flooding his system with a wave of cold liquid. His stomach expanded too quickly. His kidneys kicked into gear too fast. Electrolytes shifted before his body was ready. That sudden pressure on his internal systems was creating a ripple effect. Bloating, dizziness, and fatigue that lasted hours. Determined to test it, Frank made a simple change. Instead of drinking straight from the bottle, he poured his water into a glass. He sipped slowly, pacing himself over 15 to 20 minutes while getting dressed and preparing breakfast. The results were immediate. No more dizziness, no more fluttering in his chest. His mornings felt steadier, smoother, like his body was finally working with him instead of against him. What surprised him most wasn't just how much better he felt, but how quickly the change took effect. A lifetime of discipline had taught him to push through discomfort, but now he was learning something new. Listening to his body could be just as powerful as pushing it. Frank didn't stop drinking water in the morning. He just stopped rushing it. And in slowing down, he found the strength to start each day on a stronger, steadier footing. Number 3. Drinking from plastic bottles left out overnight. Harold had always been a creature of habit. Every night before bed, he'd fill up a plastic water bottle from the tap and place it neatly on his nightstand. It was convenient, practical, the first thing he'd reach for in the morning. At 78, he prided himself on staying hydrated, something he believed was a cornerstone of his good health. But lately, something had been off. He'd wake up with a pounding headache, even after a full night's rest. His stomach would feel uneasy, his digestion sluggish. He felt more tired than refreshed, dragging himself through the morning like he hadn't slept at all. He checked his diet, his sleep schedule, his medications. Everything seemed the same. Puzzled, Harold brought it up during a visit with his nutritionist. After walking through his daily routine, she paused at one detail. "The water bottle. Do you reuse it? Leave it by the bed overnight?" "Sure," he replied. "Why not? It's just water." She explained that plastic, especially lower quality or older bottles, can leach chemicals into the water when exposed to heat or left sitting too long. Even bottles labeled BPA-free weren't entirely safe. Many still contain similar compounds that act as endocrine disruptors, mimicking hormones and interfering with the body's natural balance. For older adults, whose hormonal systems are already more delicate, these tiny exposures could quietly wreak havoc. Harold was skeptical. It seemed like such a small thing. But he agreed to try an experiment. He swapped his plastic bottle for a glass one and made a new rule: fresh water every morning, no more leaving it out overnight. The change was subtle, but real. After a few days, the headaches faded. His digestion settled. He felt more awake when he got out of bed, more like himself. There was no dramatic shift, just a quiet return to normal that he hadn't realized he'd been missing. What struck Harold the most wasn't just the improvement, but the cause. All this time, he thought he was doing something healthy. And he was. But one overlooked detail had been slowly dragging him down. Now, his morning routine remains the same. Reach for the water, take a few sips, but the container is different. The water is fresh, and his body, at last, is at ease. It was a small change. But for Harold, it meant waking up to clearer mornings and the peace of knowing he was truly treating his body with care. Number 4, drinking water on a very full or very empty stomach. Every morning, like clockwork, Edith would open her eyes, reach for her thyroid medication on the nightstand, and chase it down with a full glass of water. No breakfast, no delay. For decades, that ritual had been part of her life. It was simple, efficient, and had always worked. Until one day it didn't. It started with queasiness, a mild, nagging discomfort that lingered after she took her pill. Then came the bloating, a tight, unsettled feeling in her gut that refused to go away. At first, she blamed it on age or stress, but when her stomach began twisting like a knot and she lost her appetite altogether, she knew something was wrong. Her blood work looked normal. Her medication hadn't changed. Nothing in her diet was unusual. So why did she feel so off every single morning? During a routine check-in, her doctor asked a question she hadn't expected. "How much water do you take your pill with?" "A full glass," she said, almost proudly. "Always have." He nodded slowly. "Try less, just a few sips, and wait before eating." It didn't seem like much, but that night she placed a sticky note by her bottle, "Just a sip." The next morning, she followed the new plan, small sips to swallow the pill, then a quiet moment to breathe. She waited a full 45 minutes before eating her usual breakfast. No rushing, no chugging. By the third day, the nausea was gone. Her stomach no longer protested. And something else surprised her. She felt lighter, steadier, more at ease. What Edith hadn't realized was how sensitive the empty stomach can be, especially in the early morning hours. Without food to buffer it, a large volume of water mixed with medication can overwhelm the stomach lining, triggering discomfort or even flushing the medication out too quickly, making it less effective. On the other hand, taking meds after a big breakfast can delay or block absorption entirely. Her body wasn't rejecting the medicine, it was just asking for a gentler approach. Now, Edith's mornings are calmer. She takes her pill with care, waits, and then enjoys a light breakfast. The symptoms that once puzzled her are a thing of the past. Sometimes it's not about changing everything, it's about fine-tuning the things we thought were harmless. For Edith, the fix wasn't in a new pill or treatment. It was in slowing down, listening to her body, and offering it the patience it had long deserved. Number 5. Skipping breakfast and only drinking water. Ruth had always been a force of nature, independent, sharp, full of energy. At 69, she still ran her own errands, led the neighborhood book club, and prided herself on keeping up with the latest health trends. So when she read an article about intermittent fasting and how skipping breakfast could reset the body, she was intrigued. The next morning, she poured herself a tall glass of water and declared to herself, "No breakfast today, just water. Let's give this a try." At first, it felt empowering. She liked the sense of control, the lightness in her body, and after a week, she noticed she dropped a few pounds. That only fueled her determination. This is working, she thought. But then things began to slip. She'd misplace her keys, forget names mid-sentence. One morning, she parked her car at the grocery store and couldn't remember where she'd left it. She laughed it off. Senior moment, she told herself. But deep down, it unsettled her. Then came the fatigue. Not exhaustion, but a steady, creeping sluggishness that dulled her spark. Her daughter noticed the change first. "You've been repeating yourself a lot lately," she said gently. Ruth was startled. She hadn't realized how far the fog had crept in. A visit to her doctor ruled out anything serious. But when she mentioned her new routine, just water in the morning, no food until noon, the doctor raised an eyebrow. "Your body needs fuel," he said, "especially in the morning. You're running on empty." Reluctantly, Ruth agreed to a change. Nothing fancy, just a small breakfast, a boiled egg, a slice of whole grain toast, a handful of berries. She paired it with her usual glass of water. The difference was almost immediate. By the third day, the haze began to lift. Her thoughts felt clearer. She remembered where she parked. Her energy returned not in a dramatic burst, but in a quiet, steady presence that carried her through the day. Her daughter noticed first. "You're back," she said, smiling. Ruth hadn't realized how much that glass of water on its own had been asking her body to do: hydrate, energize, and function without anything to burn. Water may be life, but it isn't fuel. Not on its own. Now, Ruth still practices mindfulness. She still drinks her water, but she no longer skips the first meal of the day. Because now she knows, strength isn't just in willpower. It's in giving your body what it needs to carry you forward. And for Ruth, that starts with breakfast. As each of them discovered in their own quiet way, what seemed like harmless habits were silently working against them. It wasn't about drinking less water, it was about drinking it smarter. Grace, Frank, Harold, Edith, and Ruth had all stumbled into tiny mistakes, the kind that sneak into our routines unnoticed. But with just a little awareness and a few small changes, their mornings and their well-being transformed. And that leads us to something deeper than tips or tricks. It's a reminder that our bodies are speaking to us all the time. The question is, are we listening? Overall takeaway. In a cozy corner of the same neighborhood where Ruth led her book club and Harold tended his backyard tomatoes, the five of them met once a month for coffee, or more often lately, herbal tea. They called themselves the Morning Circle, a name that started as a joke but stuck as they found themselves swapping more stories about sleep, energy, and, of all things, water. Grace laughed as she shared her old routine of throwing back a freezing glass of water and then wondering why her chest felt tight and her hands turned cold. Frank admitted he used to treat hydration like a timed event, chugging bottles in under a minute, convinced it made him more disciplined. Harold brought in his old plastic bottle one morning, passing it around like an artifact. "This," he grinned, "used to sit by my bed every single night. Who knew it was making me sick?" Edith chimed in with a knowing smile, "And I thought I was being healthy with a full glass of water on an empty stomach, until it started making me nauseous." Ruth nodded solemnly. "I skipped breakfast for a month, thinking I was being cutting edge. I was just running on fumes." They didn't share these stories out of embarrassment. They shared them with pride, because each one represented a small battle they had won, not against aging, but against the myth that aging means losing control. They'd learned something powerful. Hydration isn't just about water, it's about awareness. It's about tuning into your body's changing needs, the ones that creep in quietly over time, often masked by routine. They realized that cold water can shock, that gulping too fast overwhelms, that plastic left overnight can poison slowly, that water on an empty stomach can hurt more than help, and that skipping food means skipping fuel. What tied it all together was a mindset shift. These weren't just health tips, they were daily acts of self-respect. Choosing room temperature water was an act of gentleness. Sipping slowly was an act of patience. Swapping a plastic bottle for glass was protection. Eating a small breakfast was nourishment, not just for the body, but for the soul. And so, the Morning Circle continued, not just as friends, but as reminders to each other that even the smallest shifts, when done with care, can change everything. Because in the end, it's not about staying young, it's about staying wise. So now, the question turns to you. What small habit have you overlooked in your own mornings? Is it the icy shock of water straight from the fridge? A bottle you've refilled one too many times? A skipped breakfast masked as discipline? The beauty of what Grace, Frank, Harold, Edith, and Ruth discovered is that you don't need a dramatic overhaul to feel better. You just need to listen. Your body whispers before it ever shouts. And often, those whispers are hidden in the most ordinary routines. Take a moment tomorrow morning. Notice how you feel. Try one simple change: a slower sip, a warmer glass, a real breakfast. See what shifts. You might be surprised by how much smoother your day flows when you start by being gentle with yourself. Aging isn't about decline, it's about refinement, wisdom, grace, and the quiet power of adjusting course before the storm ever comes. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone you love. Because we all deserve mornings that begin not in chaos, but in calm, with care and with kindness. And who knows, your small shift might be the beginning of a whole new morning.